everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Thursday's edition. And, folks, we're broadcasting from the road today because I'm out of the office, but happy to join you via audio. I've got a lot to cover with you today. Listen, normally Jeffrey would be with us on Thursday, but because of Passover, he's taking the day off. Happy for Jeffrey. And again, to all our Jewish viewers and listeners out there, happy Passover. Listen, for whatever you may hear, folks, we always tell you we're going to cut through the propaganda and the BS. Look, Tuesday night was a very good night for the progressives in two major elections. Let's not kid ourselves about it. A leftist, her name is Janet, I'll butcher the last name, Protasewicz, defeated conservative former Justice Dan Kelly. This is the second time Kelly has run for the seat. He lost a couple of years ago by 11 points. He lost again this time. The left wing secured a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, so it flipped from conservative to liberal. Why did this happen? Well, I'll tell you why. A large turnout of left-wing voters in Wisconsin, and the conservatives did not show up at the level they were expected to. So now what you have is a left-leaning Wisconsin Supreme Court, and they could influence various pieces from abortion legislation, redistricting, potentially if there was a conflict in the presidential election, they could get involved. Now, that's way too soon to say that, but it's possible. But the only thing Republicans can take solace from is the fact that in Wisconsin, a Republican state senator won a race that she was not expected to win. And now they have a supermajority Republicans do in the state house and the Senate. So the newly elected judge, believe it or not, can be removed if that judge gets too far out of line. So, again, we don't want to take anything away from because we call it like it is. It was a bad night in Wisconsin for the Republican Party. And, Kelly, he says he has contempt for, his opponent. I mean, he just doesn't even consider her, worthy of the job, if you will. I mean, he is very concerned, basically now that she's won election, that Wisconsin court could move significantly to the left. So the fact is, that happened. Now, there could be a remedy for it, but again, that's not the greatest look in the world, just politically speaking. Someone did win a fair election. So that's the way the people of Wisconsin have voted at this particular time. Now, again, one of the reasons that he lost is, I believe, one of his positions was he was very strict on the abortion issue. And you've had some Republicans champion the issue. And again, if they continue to push tight restrictions, the Republican Party, they're going to continue to lose elections because whether we want to accept it or not, the majority of Americans are not in favor of the more restrictive policies. Yeah, you can say, come on, Mark, there's got to be a middle ground. Yeah, I agree there's probably a middle ground. But in the people in Wisconsin, that was a big issue. And again, this is Kelly's second consecutive loss for the seat. He lost by 11 points last time. And again, I don't have the final numbers, but he did lose again. Second big race that happened. And again, good night for the progressives is Chicago Mayor-elect Johnson. He is a liberal progressive. He defeated our preferred candidate by 51-49. Now, Johnson is a former community organizer. Does that sound familiar, Barack Obama fans? He's promising the most radical progressive change the city of Chicago has ever seen. That is frightening. He's talking about, look, he wants his solution to fighting crime is to have more mental illness counselors. He's backed away from the defund the police piece that he previously had championed. Good for that. But you're going to see a significant change in how Chicago handles its crime rate. look, under Lightfoot, everything was a disaster. Okay. And crime spiked. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt here. But if you're in Chicago, who's looking at increased taxes on real estate transactions, I got to tell you this, look out for your wallet and your safety if you're a Chicago resident. Look, anybody's going to be better than Lori Lightfoot. Okay. Lightweight was not a good mayor, had poor communication skills. Crime was rampant in the city, all kind of issues. I got to believe Johnson's going to be an improvement, albeit he's a liberal progressive. I get it. But she was completely unqualified for the job and governed accordingly. So, we wish Johnson well governing Chicago. It's a major, large U.S. city, second or third in population. And it can't get any worse there than it was under Lightfoot. So, we hope he does well. But here again, folks, the moderate candidate did not win. And he was a Democrat, but he was what I would deem to be a conservative Democrat. And he was a strong backer of the police, whereas Johnson talked about putting more money into education, trying to prevent crimes, mental illness, the typical left-wing buzzwords. Believe me, folks, Chicago's got some major issues they're going to have to deal with. And again, counting Wisconsin and Chicago, the candidates that this show was hoping would win did not win. We were 0 for 2. So let it be a harbinger for the people on the Republican Party to be aware of that, this stuff, you don't want to make too much of it, but you have to recognize that every election's different, but a loss in Wisconsin and a loss in Chicago, that does not bode well. Now, we're talking about our major cities. There was horrific news out of San Francisco. Bob Lee, who was the Cash App founder, well-known, high-profile technology guy, was murdered in San Francisco, stabbed to death in supposedly a nice neighborhood. Now, no suspect is in custody, but residents in San Francisco fear the city is nearing collapse. Not literally speaking, but figuratively speaking. Crime is soaring. People are not going back into the city to work in office buildings. Many of them remain empty. I spoke with one banker the other day, and he said, look, this problem's in San Francisco are the worst in the country, even worse than New York. You're going to see defaults. People do not want to go back into the city. And what's going to happen is, as buildings remain empty and people don't commute back to the city, tax bases are going to desert the city. And you're going to end up with a city pretty much like you have now. Homelessness, drug addicts, other losers that populate the city. And you have examples like this. An innocent person, a pillar of the community, murdered by some loser, probably some homeless drug addict. Who knows? I mean, we don't have a suspect yet. But here he is. Now, it happened at 2:30 in the morning. I'm not sure what he's doing outside at 2:30 in the morning, but needless to say, you shouldn't get murdered for being out in the city at 2:30 in the morning. And that's what happened. And people in San Francisco are outraged over this, and rightfully they should be. I visited the city a couple of years ago. It looks nothing like it used to be. I mean, you see needles everywhere, drug addicts, people laying on the streets, defecating, peeing all over the streets. I mean, this is a proud American city that is governed by the leftists, has gone so far left, and they tolerate so much stuff that liberals and far left-wing radicals support. Look what's happening to their city. Bear in mind, this is a city debating reparations for Black Americans, some which were not even born there. We didn't, in the state of California, they didn't even have slavery. And yet this virtue signaling leftist radical left, they're doing stuff like that when they ought to be focusing on how to fix the city and the crime and the homelessness and the needles and the drug addicts and everything else that liberal progressive policies bring. So again, a horrific situation where, a pillar of the community visiting town. He didn't even live there anymore. Lee had moved to Miami. He was in town visiting, and he gets killed. Now think about that when you're trying to advertise for tourists to come to your once beautiful city. Who in their right mind would want to go to that hellhole? Now, there was a brief, in politically speaking terms, some good news. A North Carolina House Republican in the state house, she flipped her affiliation from Democrat to Republican. And get this, folks, that now gives the GOP a veto-proof majority in the North Carolina State House. You might ask yourself, well, Mark, why did this happen? Well, according to her, and these aren't quotes, but inferences, the Democratic Party and some of the leaders were criticizing flag and prayer. And I guess that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. That party is, according to her, has moved so far to the left, she doesn't even recognize it anymore. Does that sound like a familiar theme, folks? I mean, Kirsten Sinema was a Democrat. She's now no longer a Democrat. She's an independent. Senator Joe Manchin's talking like he may be a presidential candidate on the no labels independent ticket. Who knows? And then in some really interesting, again, we thought this could happen. Donald Trump, again, after he's indicted, poll numbers came out back in February. We caution you about early polls here. But in February, in a Trump-Biden matchup, hypothetical matchup, and the more hypothetical we talk about, the more likely it could happen. Trump was up 45-42 against Biden. Now, again, don't read much into that because it's too early. But now, after Trump's indicted, of which over 50% of Americans feel this is wrong, Trump now leads Biden in a hypothetical match 47-40. And you know what, folks? This pollster is Rasmussen, who has been among the most accurate pollsters in the industry for the past 2 decades. And Trump continues to rail against Attorney General Bragg. You know what? Most Republicans have come out defending Trump. Even hardcore Trump critics like Mitt Romney, all across the Republican spectrum, have said what Bragg has done here is wrong. Folks, do you think it was any accident the former U.S. attorney that investigated this same issue came back and said, no, there's no case here? Cy Vance, the former district attorney before Bragg was elected, he saw the identical evidence, said no case here. And yet Bragg did. I mean, this shows you the abusive power in a deep blue Democratic city who campaigned to get Trump. Here you have New York City, crime skyrocketing, stores damaged, vandals everywhere. Yeah, and here again, what do? They spend time and resources going after the former president. Just ridiculous. But here again, if you look with Biden's poll numbers down and Trump basically looking like the guy who's going to, stand up and fight, people want a fighter. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win. Believe me, we on this show, we've said many times it would be he could get the Republican nomination. But, when you have independents who will ultimately decide the 2024 election as staunchly against Trump as they are, it's going to be difficult to win, particularly with the electoral college system the way it is, having to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Not all 3. You got to win 1, and you got to get back Arizona, Georgia, and have things pretty much fall your way. So, yeah, could he win? Sure. But this was good news for former President Trump, these poll numbers. And again, they don't mean a lot. Typically, when you have an event like this, and we've never had an event like this, but typically when something happens to, quote, candidate A, and where something causes a bump, it's normally not a permanent bump. He'll go up, and they tend to come down after that. But maybe not here. Bear in mind, Trump is leading by, pick your poll, 20 to 30 points. over his nearest competitor. Now, Ron DeSantis was in Michigan. So DeSantis looks like he's going to announce. Bear in mind, he has not announced yet. We only have, I think, 4 announced candidates right now. Private businessman, Nikki Haley, former ambassador, governor of South Carolina, Asa Hutchinson, former governor of Arkansas, and Trump. So you got 4 announced candidates right now. Let me shift a little bit here. I mean, I don't want, we've got plenty of time to cover the politics, but some major economic news has come out over the past couple of days. First of all, we had the job openings report. Pretty significant drop, folks. A month ago in February, there were 10.6 million job openings. Now it's down to 9.9. That's a pretty significant drop. ADP, the payroll processing company, says 145,000 jobs were added in March. Now, the Labor Department will release, the employment numbers tomorrow and the unemployment numbers. A lot of people on Wall Street are expecting a soft number. 145 would probably be considered a soft number. Bear in mind, the Federal Reserve has been trying to slow the economy with these increasing interest rates, and it appears to be working. Bond yields this week have dropped significantly, indicating slowing economic activity ahead. So again, you take a lot of the layoffs that have happened. Most of the layoffs have been in the technology sector, and most of those people were able to find other jobs. But layoffs happening in technology sector, less jobs being created. I mean, that's sort of the potential for a soft landing, as some people are saying. Now, there's still problems in the banking sector. That hasn't just gone away yet. And you still have certain economists warning that we're going to be in for a hard landing. But, Treasury yields, which were lower earlier, are ticking. They were down overall in the week. Bond yields are down, but they are ticking back up. There is concern ahead of this report. If the report comes in hot tomorrow, look out below. But overall activity, again, we've said it many times, it's hard to have a recession when you have 3.6, 3.7% unemployment rate. But we'll see. Stranger things have happened in this post-COVID world. So again, the market had rallied earlier today, still up, and it's trying to recoup some losses from the last couple of days. Look, folks, if the economy does head into recession, these stock prices are way out of whack. I mean, you're going to see some significant haircuts, as we like to say in business. But there's no guarantee that will happen. A lot of people are parking money in money market accounts. Why? Well, you can get 4.5%, in some cases 5% as a, quote, risk-free investment. That term risk-free has taken on a different meaning now after the issues of the banking system. But again, anyhow, heading into the Easter weekend, finishing out the first quarter, economic news has been surprisingly strong, given the fact that we've had upward revisions in the jobless claims. Bond yields came down, meaning the price went up. But now as we head in, again, towards the afternoon, yields are ticking back up a little bit. Now, in international news, close it out here a little bit. Taiwan's president, as most of you know, they showed the picture, met with McCarthy in LA over the weekend. Again, not an official visit, and the government of the United States went out of its way to say, this is just a pass-through, and to have, hopefully, the Chinese calm down about it. But a U.S. delegation flew to Taiwan, landing in Taipei, as a show of support. Look, China's got tools at its arsenal if it really wanted to push some buttons. And you've got the issue right now, with TikTok and what the government's going to do related to that. So, keep your eye on that. Look, the U.S. does a lot of business in China. U.S.-based companies do. And then to close it out on a political note here, as we head into the Easter weekend, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has filed paperwork to run against President Biden for the Democratic nomination. Interesting. Boy, I tell you, if you look back on your history books now, remember when his father, not his father, his late uncle, Edward Kennedy, ran against Jimmy Carter. Well, Joe Biden is going to get a challenge. Now, will it be a serious challenge? I don't know, but the fact that a Kennedy is going to run against a sitting president makes for some interesting news out there. So look, folks, um, lots of things in the crosshairs here. We are going to stay on top of all this economic news, pay attention to how the political winds are shifting, because they tend to give us some indications. And again, as we've said before, you know, this Trump thing with this indictment it appears to have strengthened him. Where it will go, we don't know. The case isn't going to be in court again until December, first week in December, I think December 6th. So there's a lot of things that still to be happening. It's a media circus, as you're well aware, but as we head into and more candidates announce, it will be amplified. And as far as the economy goes, with these numbers, we're getting mixed results. We'll analyze them on Tuesday for you, the results that we get, tomorrow. And as always, again, we try to call them as we see them. And folks, we're conservative, but we took 2 L's on Tuesday night, effectively, and we need to look and learn and listen and make adjustments so that the objective is to win elections, not lose them. All right, listen, thanks for listening today. Again, I'll be back in studio on Tuesday. Have a great Easter weekend. Thanks for listening to us today. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Tuesday.